Welcome back, and today we're going to be learning how to prompt for layout and structure. The first step in building an award-worthy site is planning its layout. The layout isn't just going to happen by magic, it's the architecture of your content on the page. As Awards notes, web design layout is about architecture of contents and accessibility, and it must create a strong visual impact. In other words, we must decide which sections go where. For example, the header, the hero, the features, portfolio, footer, etc. And also how big or prominent each part should be. Good layout uses visual hierarchy. We've covered some of that in the lessons prior, but we're going to go over a little bit more while we're building today. This is going to give you the most important elements like headings or main images, larger size, brighter color, or prime placement, so the eye naturally falls on them first. Nielsen-Norman Group reminds us that a clear visual hierarchy guides the eye to the most important elements on the page. So in practice, this means planning sections like a header, a navbar, a full screen hero section, content grids or cards, and a footer, and specifying how they should look relative to each other. Key sections is going to be identifying each major block. For example, your navigation bar, your hero or your banner, features or services section, image gallery or portfolio grid, about text, contact form, footer, everything. For each, you're going to want to define its role and style. For example, a hero section is often full screen with a big background image or video and centered headline text. A portfolio section might be a responsive grid of cards. Think in terms of web layout patterns. For example, grid layout, split screen layout, card layout, off canvas side menu. Awards winning websites even list common patterns like full screen photo banners, magazine style grids, split screens, and off canvas panels. So you're going to want to decide which patterns that your site that you're building will use. Responsive behavior is also going to matter. You're going to want to specify how the layout should adapt. For example, multi-column on desktop, single column on mobile. For instance, 3 columns on wide screens collapsing into 1 column on narrow screens in a portfolio grid. So for example, if we plan a scroll-based behavior, that's in a future topic, name it now, right? For example, you're going to want to mention a parallax background in the hero section to indicate the background should move slower than the foreground on scroll. What this is going to do is it's going to create a depth and a slight 3D effect by causing the background to move at a slower rate to the foreground when scrolling. This tells the AI that we want that effect. For example, let's put this into action. Create me a hero section of a website that displays a strong scroll-based parallax effect. Generate a photo and put it there and overlay with strong contrasting text. So the effect is extremely noticeable. Add a section below so we have room to scroll. So as we go on, you're going to understand you're basically talking as if you were talking to a human. Okay. And I know that might sound a little bit weird. It's AI. We don't want to cross that boundary at the end of the day. I personally don't. I don't think I'm talking to a human. I recommend you don't go that path either. But if it helps you develop, if it helps you become happier with the project, and it feels like you have company, be my guest, my friend. So this is what I'm going to put in. I'm going to press enter. And a lot of this is going to be easier the more you understand the actual terminology behind the process, right? Because the only way you're going to be able to build things like this is by understanding what words that these certain animations and actions and all of these other scroll-based behaviors are called, right? Otherwise, AI is going to spit out these random, ugly, template-like AI containers that just are not visually appealing, and it just makes no sense. So To get to the level where we need to be at, we need to understand the terminology behind all of these behaviors. So as I speak throughout these lessons, please listen very carefully to the words that I use. For example, parallax, GSAP, 3JS, scroll-based behavior, right? Columns, grids, all of these things that we've covered previously with a couple of new ones. Just make sure that you're trying to either write these down so you can have them for future reference, or if you have a good memory, just please keep track of them, because that is mostly going to determine your success throughout this program. You need to understand the terminology. That way you can use that terminology to relay to the AI agent. That way it knows exactly what you're talking about, because it's not going to guess. Those type of things are not common. That's why you're here. You're learning something that not everybody has access to. So that being said, let's wait for AI to spit out this hero section, and then we'll circle back. Now that it's done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Claude, how do I get you to open a browser inside Cursor if I don't have web browser enabled? So Cursor actually offers this thing where you're able to open a browser. See how you can see this command right here? Boom, you can open the browser. So what Claude can do is it can actually access this browser and you can view it without needing to run it on your actual computer. So if you have the permissions off, all you need to do is go to Command-Shift-P, or you go up here, click on this, Show and Run Commands, click on Open MCP Settings. You can even search that, MCP Settings. If it's not there for you, click on that, and then this will open. Now, what's going to happen here is you have this browser automation, right? So if this is off, it won't be allowed to open. If it's on browser tab, it will be able to open. Make sure it's on browser tab. Now, what we're going to do after that's generated is I'm going to tell Claude to open the hero parallax inside the browser so I can see. So what it's doing now is it's actually starting a server on your computer in your terminal, right? So you see how that just generated this? All I needed to tell it, right? Now it's fading. All I needed to tell it was the parallax. The fade is different. I didn't tell it to do the fade, but it's not a bad start. It has the parallax there, but this is the stronger parallax. Do you see how the background scrolls at a slower rate? It shifts, right? It causes that moving effect. That right there is called parallax. Now, other than that, for example, when you're building, you don't just say something like make it nice, okay? You need to be specific. You need to spell out sections and styles. Like for example, you might write include a fixed top navigation bar, logo left, menu right, minimal aesthetic, less is more. A full screen hero section, and a background image and centered title text. We already have that, so I'm not going to do that. A features section in a 3-column card grid, an about section with text beside an image, and a footer with social links. Now, by calling out each section and its layout, you leave no guesswork. You can even mention colors or themes here if you know them. For example, dark background with white text to guide the design. So your prompt structure, for example, the role, the stack, the specs, the constraints, these are all very important. So it circles back to the terminology, right? When writing your cursor prompt, you need to follow a clear structure. A proven format has 4 parts. These are the role, which means you need to tell the AI what hat it's wearing. For example, say, act as a senior front-end developer and designer. This sets the tone for a high-quality, architect-level answer. Full transparency, I don't always do that. I speak to Claude like it's a human, and I kind of just guide it throughout the process. Other than that, the next one is your tech stack. Be precise about the tools and frameworks, right? For example, GSAP for animations and 3JS for any 3D graphics. So write these down, Do some research on what GSAP is, GSAP. This is mostly used to incorporate the animations into your project. So GSAP by itself is a very powerful tool that allows these scroll-based animations, and three.js, THREE.js for any 3D graphics, right? So write these words down because you're gonna need them in the future. These are very important for you. Being specific helps avoid assumptions. Your specifications are also very important. This is number 3. You're gonna wanna list exactly what you want in the layout, right? You can tell AI to generate something, like say, build me a landing page that's a beautiful aesthetic and minimal and XYZ. It's not going to fully process the exact depth of what you're aiming for. What this means is, sure, it can build out the structure in a singular prompt, but then after you're done, after it's built out that structure, more or less, don't go in and edit the entire thing at the same time. For example, when you print out the entire structure off of a singular prompt, AI will bring that out as fast as possible and probably not have any of the specific details that you're looking for. Instead of going back and telling it, you know what, I don't like the whole thing, do the whole thing again this way. That's the wrong way to do it. You're gonna go back, you're gonna start from one specific section that you find the most value in, that you can see it being in a certain way that is required for you. Once you've edited that section to perfection in a perfect way that you want it to look like, you're basically going to move on to another section one at a time and edit all of those sections one at a time until each one is perfect in the order and style that you believe it should be in. The best way to do this is actually to perfect one section and then tell AI to reference that section for the appearance and styling and implement a creative, unique design for the next section that you have in mind. So I'll go deeper into that when we're building out the actual website in modules 5 and 6. But other than that, that's pretty much the basics of what you have there. You're gonna wanna list exactly what you want in the section. Under this, enumerate each section and its details, right? Use exact values or clear descriptions. And when possible, give example values, right? Color codes if you have them, or if you don't care, just say blue, light blue, green. It will come up with something. Font sizes, large, medium, small. And then if it prints something that's a little bit too big, you could say, bring it down a tiny bit, right? If it's too small, bring it up a little bit. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you need to guide it one step at a time instead of trying to confuse it, right? Because if you're saying too much, it's going to get confused. You're going to want to end with strict requirements. For example, single page layout, no external dependencies or libraries beyond the stack above, no placeholder text, fill it with real example content, production ready, fully functional code only. A good constraint example, which you're going to learn later, don't think too much about those right now. These are just words that you're going to want to write down and leave a note of so you can refer back to it for the future, okay? So a good restraint example from experienced developers is single files, no external deps, no placeholder content, production ready only. So this ultimately tells Cursor to produce complete standalone code with real content. By structuring the prompt this way, you actually eliminate most follow-up rounds. In one case study, a developer showed that a vague prompt, like build me a dark card with a copy button, failed, right? It didn't really resonate. But a detailed version with role, exact colors, hover states, transitions, and constraints succeeded instantly. So this is where it's very important to understand the terminology. So you're going to learn a lot of this terminology throughout the remainder of the sessions. And the best thing that I can offer you right now is the guidance to write these words down if you do not understand them. Because at the end of the day, you can look them up on the internet and you can refer back to exactly what that means. And that's going to be the most powerful part of this entire program is the terminology. So that being said, you can see it created something. Nothing too crazy, but definitely a lot better than the basic AI websites that are being produced today. I'm not saying it's perfect, not even close, but it's good for a first one. So that's all for today. I'll see you guys on the next lesson where we're going to be covering a little more in depth before we end up building out a full beautiful project that I hope you follow along with. I'll see you on the next one.